we met through a friend of a friend, yeah, we met through a friend of a friend, and she was telling me about how great a vocal coach he is, and he really helped me redefine my mix and
Mm,
really like kind of hone in on the idea of like you can sing effortlessly as high as you can. And so, man, since then, like I've just been going down the rabbit hole. Like I just love doing exercises and I love discovering new ways to use my mixed voice. And it's a long journey to learn how to sing high, but once you get it, I now feel like it's like riding a bike. Like I will never
mm.
forget this feeling.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Singing Simply, where through tips, tutorials, and interviews like these, we aim to simplify everything related to singing. So today, I'm very, very excited to have singer-songwriter Harry J on the show. Thank you very much for joining me, Harry.
Of course, thanks for having me. This is super exciting to be a part of this.
Right on, right on. So I think maybe to start off, Harry, I'd love to kind of learn a bit more about your music journey. Like, where did all of this start for you?
Absolutely. So musically, I've been playing piano since I was, I think, 5 years old. I started taking piano
Uh-huh.
lessons. I was a kid with a lot of uh, compulsive energy, and I used piano and music as well as sports. I played sports to sort of harness that energy. And something about creating music on the piano really kind of hit home for me at a pretty early age.
Mm,
Um, Obviously, when you're, 5, 6, 7, you're not really writing songs or anything, but I was just kind of creating melodies on the piano and goofing around. And my little keyboard had a record setting, so I would goof around with that. And I started playing guitar when I was 12. One of my little league coaches was a guitar teacher,
mm,
and he really opened my eyes to sort of developing a musical ear. He really helped me develop really good pitch and just the ability to learn songs by ear.
mhm,
And that just really jolted me as a kid. I was just so fascinated by the idea that like I could listen to any song on the radio, or back then it was iTunes and my iPod, and learn it.
uh-huh.
Yeah, I know, very different from now, but so that was super cool. I really got into that. Like I said, I was a pretty serious athlete. I played baseball. I played basketball as well. And I was really serious about baseball for a while, but there was something about just the creative energy that you develop and harness when you were making music that I kind of
Mm,
couldn't let go of. And I was getting more and more serious about baseball, but I couldn't really let go of music. And the more I sort of leaned into it, the more it just took over my life. Like I was just
mm,
like, I want to write songs all the time. And I performed at like our local talent shows in high school. And I did them every year. I would do, we had like a battle of the bands at my church and like all this stuff. And I just got like really addicted to performing and
mm,
writing and creating. And so it ended up, becoming more of a passion play than a hobby for me. Um, so when I was 18, I decided to audition for Berklee College of Music.
uh-huh.
I had been to a summer camp there a few years before, and I really liked it. And I got in, and I attended. I graduated a 4 year program in 2.5 years.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, I was like not trying to go into debt, man. So yeah, I took a lot of credits for each semester. But yeah, I got out, and then my recording on my computer started playing. Weird. So yeah, so I did that, and then yeah, man, I love Berklee. I studied a lot of jazz composition. I was a jazz composition major.
Mm,
Studied some songwriting stuff, and I sang at weddings to make money. That was my
nice.
weekend gig. Yeah, man, it was fun. And then I really enjoyed my time in Boston, but I decided to hit the road and move out to LA to
Uh-huh.
do the whole artist thing out here. And now I'm out here coaching voice as well, teaching music and creating and making music. I'm a songwriter and an artist out in LA. So I'm living the dream, baby.
You're living the dream. That's dope. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, one of the things that really stuck out to me, Harry, is you're pretty well versed in jazz. And so,
Oh yeah.
maybe for someone who isn't as familiar, tell me a bit about that kind of like writing or performing jazz music. How does that kind of differ from what you kind of see with like pop music out there?
Oh man, that's a great question. Great question. So I think right now pop music is in a very interesting transitional phase where
Mm,
we're hearing a lot of jazz elements fused into pop music.
Right.
So an artist that I've really been listening to is Dua Lipa. She's a pretty big
Oh,
pop,
yeah. Yeah.
mainstream top 40, and there's a lot of groove and jazz elements infused. But when you're composing something that's strictly jazz, it's really, to me, it's about the feeling, the emotion that the chords and the
Mm,
harmony give you. To me, it's all about the harmony and the relationship between the harmony and the melody.
right.
That's the focal point. And that's what I studied as a jazz composition student. It was all about chord changes and reharmonization and understanding why, when you're creating a melody, why those notes relate to the chords underneath them, versus moving out to LA, where I've sort of immersed myself in, I wouldn't say as much top 40 pop, but I sort of do a hybrid of jazz and pop, and understanding that it's really more about catching a lyrical vibe and allowing the music
Mm,
to survey the lyrics in a different
mm,
way.
mm,
But they're quite synergistic. I mean, I think jazz and pop do go hand in hand. It's just approaching the same goal from a different direction. You know what I mean?
mm, mm, mm. Right. Okay. Okay. I would like to really touch upon reharmonization because that's something I
Yeah.
looked into briefly. I don't really have as strong of a jazz background, but can you tell me a bit more about reharmonization?
Dude, I love reharm.
Uh,
I'm a reharm addict. So there's kind of two ways to go about it. So the concept reharmonization, for anyone listening who doesn't know, is you're taking a structure, a chord structure, chord change. Say, for example, we take 8 bars, eight measures of a pop song. Let's say we take
uh,
even a Beatles song. We take
yeah.
"Let It Be" by the Beatles, and it's got 4 chords. How can you construct a completely different chord base underneath the same
Mm,
melody that still gets you to the same point?
right.
So the way I look at it is, I'm about to go full nerd mode. I
Please,
apologize for
please do.
feeling cool, cool. So, we've got 3 different main types of chord function. We have
Right.
dominant chords, we have subdominant chords, and we have tonic chords. Tonic
Mm,
chords I think of as home base. That's
mm,
chord number
mm,
one. That's C
mm.
major in the key of C. Um, then we have subdominant chords. To me, subdominant chords are the beginning of a tense moment in a chord change. They lead
Ah,
to the dominant chord. The dominant chord is the most tense chord. It takes you back to the tonic. So it's
right.
sort of a circular motion. It's very cyclical the way it works. What you want to do is you can take other keys that are related to the key you're working. So again, let's say we're working in C. What
Yeah.
if we were to take, instead of C major, what if we were to take C minor and borrow some of the subdominant chords from C minor and replace the subdominant chords in C major with those?
Ah, okay. Okay.
So that's a cool way to look at it. And there's a concept at Berkeley, we learned it. It's called modal interchange. So
Mm,
that's essentially borrowing chords from related modes of the same key. So again, like C minor, or if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, you could borrow something from C Phrygian, put it into C
mm,
major.
mm.
But the only way you know how to substitute chords is you take subdominants from those other keys and replace subdominant chords from the original key.
Subdominants. Okay. Gotcha.
You can do dominants or tonics or whatever, but it has to be the same function chord replacing a chord of the same function in the other key. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So subdominant to subdominant, dominant to
Right,
dominant,
or
and
dominant to
tonic.
dominant, tonic, tonic. And that's the way I go about it. That's
Mm,
that's obviously called functional substitution. There's other ways too. You can even write out the melody that you have and say, okay, in this 4 bar phrase, here's the main kind of meat and potatoes of the melody. These are the 4 notes it's encapsulating. What other chords besides the one underneath has those 4 chords? That's another way
mm,
to do it. Or sorry,
mm,
4 notes.
mhm.
But I really like the functional substitution. There was a guy named Daniel Ian Smith. He was one of my professors at Berkeley, and like that dude he's like a genius with this reharm stuff. And I took his reharm course my last year, and he talked all about the functional substitutions,
Mm.
and that was such an eye-opening class for me. So I do that a lot. Even when I'm writing, I'll write something with 4 chords and then reharm something that I've already written to get
Mm.
more of a jazz tonality to it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I've seen so many covers on YouTube where it's you can usually tell like the musicians who are a bit more well versed, they can always kind of jazz things up just by switching the
Right.
chords around, and it just gives a different but still retains somewhat of the meaning.
That's the
Um,
thing, man. Yeah, it gets you to the same place. Like it's all about getting from point A to point B, but maybe we take the side streets to get to point B. And the side
Mm.
streets still get you to point B, but it sounds like it's like, oh, I'm taking a nice Sunday drive and I'm seeing houses I've never seen before. That's how I think of it. It's like, whoa, this is kind of a unique way to get there. And now we're here, you know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I wanted to quickly ask about, so for example, say you've got C major, you've also got
Sure.
the relative minor, A minor.
Of
Are you
course.
also able to just borrow chords from that? Is that similar?
So it's going to be a little different there because
Mm.
if you think about A minor is C major starting from the sixth degree.
Yes.
So theoretically, yes, you could substitute chords from A minor into C major, but they're going to have the same function
Mm.
because, let's say, for example, A minor, let's say if we were to go, so let's see, if we were to take the 5 of A minor, that's
Mm.
E minor.
Mhm.
The only way you would substitute that is if you were to modify that to make it E dominant 7. So
Ah, right, right.
sometimes in minor, you know, they'll even though it's not diatonic, you'll take the 5 chord and turn it into a dominant chord anyway.
Mm.
You could substitute that and use that in context with the C major, but I would look for the parallel minor, so C major to C minor. That's
Mm.
really where the key is because those are completely different chord structures because there's different accidentals in that key signature, whereas A minor is all white keys and so is C major. So you want
Yeah.
to find you want to find the keys that have different accidentals and different key signatures. And then it's really like, whoa, I'm really experimenting. Like I'm playing with fire here, you know?
Exactly, exactly. I think that's a great point because it's almost like if you're going from C major to A minor, it's the same
Yeah.
notes. It's the same notes, and you're just
Right.
reshuffling it. It doesn't add any flavor to it compared to obviously switching to a minor, where you're right. You've also got these black keys all of a sudden that can really add
Right.
flavor. Yeah, fantastic.
That's
You
what I'm
you
talking
break it
about,
down
like
really
side
well.
things. Yeah, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? That's a E flat major 7 that's leading to a 5. Like what's going on there? And it's
Mm,
just, you know, I think the cool thing about pop music, say, dialing it back to what you were mentioning earlier, is a lot of pop music now is starting to use this idea of functional substitution or modal interchange. I'm hearing it in everything from a Justin Bieber record. I'm hearing it
mm,
in the Dua Lipa record. I'm hearing it in a ton of Bruno Mars stuff.
mm,
It's
mm.
just really cool to see jazz starting to permeate the mainstream, sort of like it was back in the 60s and 70s. And man, I'm excited for sort of the depth we're seeing and we'll hopefully continue to see in mainstream music.
Yeah, exactly. I think just getting away from like the four chords, C, A minor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy 4 chord songs too, but I think a lot of 4 chord songs are just directly the same as other 4 chord songs.
Mm,
It's like the same, you know, 1 4 5 1, whatever, 1 6 4 5 1, whatever it is.
mm.
So it's cool to see a shake up a little bit, you know?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So that was a wonderful breakdown of the kind of
Oh,
theory or like reharmonization. But I know you're also a fantastic performer. Tell me a bit about this kind of seven-piece band because I know you started one
yeah.
earlier. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, man. So when I got to Berkeley, I was lucky enough, it's just a coincidence. So I'm from the DC area, Northern Virginia, Nova represent. So I was moving into my dorm. I think it was the day I moved in or the second day,
Uh-huh.
and my parents had just left. And I'm like setting up my dorm. I'm like putting the posters on the wall, and these 2 kids knock on my door, and they're like, you know, hey, we just moved in down the hall. You know, excuse me, we're just going around to introduce ourselves to people, yada yada, the usual. And one of the kids has a lanyard with his key from a rival high school of mine.
Mm, mm.
And I'm like, whoa, that's like crazy. Did you go to, I can't remember what that is, like South Lakes. I'm like, did you go to South Lakes? And he's like, oh, yeah, we both did. We're from Virginia. I'm
Uh,
like, I'm from Virginia. And I'm like, well, what do you guys play? And they're like, we play trumpet. I'm like, well, that's crazy because I'm obsessed with jazz and I love trumpets and I want to write pop music that has horns in it. So I got, their names are Khalil and Kyrell. They're still great friends of mine to this day.
mhm.
Um, so we met up and we started, I wrote these tunes and they helped me write the horn parts. And we ended up deciding because we're all from Virginia, we might as well find other cats at Berkeley that are from the DC area so we can
Yeah.
play around together in the summers when we go home. So we looked around and we found a drummer from my high school who went to Berkeley named Scott. A friend of mine played guitar named Aiden, bass player named Cole. We had a bunch of sick dudes playing with us that were all from Northern Virginia. And there were a few iterations of the band on the way to that had just, you know, my roommate
Mm,
played in it and another friend of mine played drums for a while. But we settled the final kind of product was 7 guys that were all into those funky jazzy jams from the DC area.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it was called Harry J and the Bling. So
That's a fantastic
I
name.
think yeah, I think the bling came from Hotline Bling. The song came out like right when I started the band.
Uh-huh.
And actually one of the guys that wasn't from Virginia that started in the band, he was like, yo, like Harry J and the Bling, like it's so sick. And so it just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Um, but we played a lot around Boston. We played a bunch of gigs throughout New England, really. I mean, I toured up and down the East Coast like 3 times
Oh,
with different
nice.
iterations of the band, but it was always this big, like we had 2 trumpets, myself lead vocals and playing guitar. We had another guitarist, a keyboard player, bass, drums. So we had 7 guys.
Uh-huh.
And it really opened my eyes to arranging and being a band leader. Like it really kind of was more about leading a group of guys as opposed to just writing songs and saying, here's your part, just do what you want. Like it
Yeah.
was like, yo, I had to learn to call rehearsals and run rehearsals. I had to learn to like arrange stuff for a bigger band. I had to learn to strip it down for certain sets. So that was a really fun challenge for me to be the leader of a big group of people. But man, those guys are awesome. Like we're all still such great friends. And it ended up being, we all after college went our separate ways and I kind of went completely solo from there. But
Uh-huh.
and I look back on all those days with like just so it was so much fun. All those tours we did and all the gigs and we played all over the place, man. It was really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I actually love to ask, like, what's been, like, I'm sure you must have one. Like, what's been one of your most memorable performance?
There's a few. Yeah, there's a bunch. Okay. So I have like 3 in my head, but the one there's 2. Okay, I'll give you 2. There's one that I can't leave out, and then there's another one that just is. So the first sold out show I ever played
Mm.
was in Virginia, my hometown. There's a venue called Jam and Java. It's like 350 capacity, something like that. But I grew up going to shows there. I mean, and they had big people like I saw like Andy Grammer play there, and like there's a lot of like mainstream big time people that played sets there.
Uh-huh.
And I played like they have local nights. I played the local nights when I was in high school and stuff, and it was cool. But when I got the band together, we came back for a Christmas break in 2016, and they had an opening like the day after Christmas, the 26th, and they were like, "Yo, we heard about your band. Like, do you want to take a headlining slot?"
Mm.
I was like, "Oh yeah, like definitely." And we hooked up with the guitar player in my band had a friend's band who hooked up with us, and they opened for us. And man, the 2 bands together, we sold like it was like we had people sneaking in through the freaking back
Damn.
door. Like it was crazy. Like, it was like 400 people in this tiny room, and like I think we sold out the show like days before.
That's
Like it was
crazy.
just like crazy. And so I got up there and we actually expanded the band for that show because I knew it was gonna be a big deal. I added background singers. So we had 10 people and a sax player. So we had 10 people in the band. And I got up there and I got requested to cover Baby Blue by Action Bronson, which is like one of my favorite songs. And we did it as the encore and I stage dived. I like dove into the crowd and like they crowd surfed me and like, dude, they were carrying me all over the place. And I had in-ear monitors, and like people were like pulling on the monitors. It was crazy.
That's crazy, dude.
That was one of the best moments of my life. Like that was such a cool show. And it gave me a lot of hope that like, if I can do this now, I was like 19, if I can do this when I'm 19, I can keep this going, So that was a big motivational tool. And then the other one was we played a show in Maine on tour. We were opening for a bigger band called Roosevelt Dime, who had a pretty big, like a small national following, but a national following. So they were able to tour. And we didn't know anything about this place in Maine. It's like a big brewery that did live music. And we were kind of writing it off like it's probably gonna be like 50 people in this room. It's gonna be crappy. And it was like 200 people. And we got free craft beer and all this amazing food. And it like, dude, it was in the middle of the woods, like in the middle of nowhere. And it was just rocking music all night, free beer. Like that was one of the best days of that tour. I mean, I'll never forget that. Like the guys I was playing with, we went to a hotel that night and man, we were all just like on cloud 9. It was like, how do we play that show to like a couple hundred people we've never met, drinking this amazing beer, eating this amazing food? That was really cool, man. That was such a surprise,
Yeah, that sounds like actually sounds like a lot of fun. Now
it was great.
I wanted to ask, Harry. So, like, I mean, like we've talked about all these positives. You've had this kind of
Sure.
wildly awesome performance with touring. Has there ever been a point where you felt like you're burning out, or you're like, gosh, like I don't know if I want to do music? Any points like that?
I actually just had one of those about a month ago. Yeah, I got to be honest. I mean, you know, when you go to a place like Berkeley, you are surrounded by music all the time,
Mm,
and it can be difficult to. I'm trying to think of how to put this, but Berkeley's kind of notorious for like having people who go viral from there.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
John Mayer went to Berkeley, and Charlie Puth, and
yeah.
Passion Pit, and all these people. But you know, at the time in college, I was so focused. I was always really pretty into being a student. I always
Mm,
liked learning.
mm,
So I was so focused on being a good student that I kind of had my blinders on by default a little bit.
mm,
When I moved to LA though, and I've been here for 2 years now, when I moved to LA, I was like, holy crap, like I am surrounded by people who are killing it. Like
mm,
playing, headlining national tours, playing Bonnaroo, playing Lollapalooza, opening up for, I knew someone who was opening up for why can't I think of his name? Leon Bridges, like all these
mm,
crazy people, like, and I mean, I've had plenty of these moments, but about maybe 2 months ago, man, I had been working so hard, and like I said, I'm a music teacher too, so I was working, teaching like 30 hours a week,
mhm.
going to the studio during the pandemic,
Yeah,
so teaching on Zoom, which is very difficult. As I'm sure you're doing all this on Zoom, I'm sure it can be
yeah,
difficult.
yeah.
Teaching on Zoom, not being able to play shows, which to me, I love the creative process and I love writing, but performing and being on that stage is something that drives me so much.
Mm,
Losing the ability to do that has been really tough.
yeah,
So not having that, and then being in the studio for hours and just feeling like I felt so hopeless. Like, what is the point of this? Like, I can't perform. I can't really promote the music properly. I don't feel like I want to release it because it's just everyone's like just dead inside right now. And it
mm,
really got to me. I mean, I was burning out. I mean, I play a lot of golf. That's like my secret side hobby. And like, dude, I was just golfing every day because I just didn't want to do music. I was like, man, I'm so burnt out. Like,
yeah, yeah,
and I think it's really hard to get through that. I mean, it took me a long time to get through that. And it's really depressing, to be
yeah.
fully honest. Like, it was very depressing. But what I found is like, you have to just accept it. I
Mm,
was fighting it. I was like, I'm going to force myself to write for 2 hours today. I'm going to force myself to go to the studio. And like, you just kind of have to accept, like, this sucks right now. I'm just going to take
mm.
my hands off the wheel and see what happens?
100%. I mean, like, I think it's a guy called Jim Rohn. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's like
Mhm.
a kind of very famous kind of life advice kind of guru.
Yeah.
And he was just saying how, like, in general, right, you're going to go through the seasons of life, summer, winter, whatnot. And we are in a pretty big winter at the moment. And so I think just learn to ride through that winter. And I think one thing that's really important is a lot of kind of growth does also happen in winter. So maybe potentially, right? Like, is there anything we can transition? I've seen a lot of artists transition to like Twitch or like live streaming their performances.
Doing some of that lately. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Any success there?
Yeah, we've had a couple good live stream shows. I'd love to try Twitch. I'm a bit of a Pokemon buff myself, so maybe I'll combine the two. I'll stream some Pokemon and do music. But yeah, I think that's kind of what the industry is moving toward. But what you said is exactly right, man. I mean, we're going through the seasons of life. This is winter, and
Hmm.
the very wise woman that is my mother, who, by the way, it's her birthday today. Shout out to my
Happy
mom.
birthday.
Love you. There you go. She always says, like, embrace the pain of life, embrace the sadness.
Hmm.
Like, you just kind of have to like accept it. I think I was deflecting so much, like forcing myself to fight through it, that I
Yeah.
got to a point where I was like, dude, this isn't getting any better because I'm not just accepting it sucks and it's gonna
Hmm.
suck and that's it,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
So I think what you said is exactly right. Just live through the season.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Let's dive a bit more into your music, Harry. So, like you've released a couple of songs. You've got Pool Party, which I checked out, which is awesome, awesome. Tell me a
Thank
bit
you.
about the story or like maybe the journey behind creating this kind of song.
Dude, great question. That song started with the bass line. I have been super into bass this whole year. 2020 was the year of the bass for me. I bought my friends like old crappy secondhand bass, and I'm obsessed with old disco tracks, and
Uh-huh.
I've been listening to a lot of Prince, a lot
Mm.
of Patrice Rushen, a lot of Stevie Wonder, and I don't know, man. I just got really into slap bass, and I started playing this line on the E string. It's an it's an E minor, and I was just kind of slapping around an E, and I sort of accidentally came across that boom, bam, bam, boom, bam,
Ah.
bam. Whoa, this sounds really cool, and I just sort of developed the bass line. That was one of those coming of age moments. I was sitting at the computer, like I've got like this home studio, sitting at the computer playing the bass line, and like the whole song came to me in like 2 hours. I was just like, oh man, I hear the melody, I got the bass line, I got the whole melody, I got the whole chord changes, boom, it's like down. The lyrical concept came from it's sort of an amalgam of a few different stories I've heard. It's related to my life as well, but
Uh-huh.
I remember feeling that groove as like it's in a minor key, so it's not going to be like the most happy-go-lucky song, but it's so groovy and funky. It has to be kind of like what's the word? It's got to be witty. It's got to be just kind of a quirky but
Mm. Mm.
really melancholy lyrical theme, but just delivered in a quirky way.
Mm. Mm.
So I'm thinking, when I was in high school, and in general, when people are that age, everybody wants to be cool. Everybody wants to be cool, and like nobody feels like they're cool. Everybody wants to be cool. Nobody feels like they're cool. And that whole idea, I was like, man, like I remember there were parties I didn't get invited to, and I just felt so
Yeah.
mad. And there were other parties I did get invited to, and I knew other people who felt mad about it. And I just kind of took that whole concept of like this like frustrated kid who's like, screw it, like I'm just gonna get famous and throw my own party, and then you're not invited. And it just turned into this goofy, witty like song. And it all came from the bass line. But you know, in general, when I create songs like that, the groove comes first for me. The music, just from the jazz background, the chord changes and the groove that I create
Mm.
develop the entire idea for the lyrics and the song. So that was the whole thing. I caught the moment with the groove, and I was like, boom, I know what I need to write about. Here's the idea. I'm gonna go do it tonight.
Yeah, that's cool. I actually just came off an interview with a songwriting coach, and she actually mentioned
Okay.
that a lot of fantastic songs are done when you have something to say. And usually, right, if you have that idea, you should be able to complete it pretty quick. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. The songs you like that you really want to write, they come out just like that. So I think that's a really cool idea.
I think that, yeah, I think if you have a groove, I mean, and again, it's different for each person. Like I've written with
Mm,
writers, written with writers who are like live and die by the lyrics first. Lyrics have to
right.
come first, and that's totally cool too. It's just my method is like, let's catch the vibe. Like let's feel what we're trying to feel with the groove. I've
Mm,
got this, like exactly what you just said. Like let's make a story to write before you even write the story. I
mm,
know what I'm going to write about. Boom, story
mm.
time. It's easy. It's like getting a prompt in an essay. You're like, write about a time you were upset about this, blah, blah, and write it this way. Boom, I can do that. So
Yeah.
I think it's a cool way to look at it.
100%, 100%. We've covered a lot of ground, Harry. I mean, we talked about jazz,
Yeah,
we talked about your history. We haven't talked about singing, which is kind of the point of this podcast.
yeah,
You,
man.
you can sing very high, dude. I've checked out some of your stuff on your story. Like you've got a crazy a mix if you use those terms. Like were you always able to do that?
No, no,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. I was classified as a kid as like a bass two, like not as a kid, but when I was a younger adult, kind of late adolescent, my voice had changed and developed and dropped. I was always a decent singer. I could always hold a tune, but
Hmm.
everybody said, oh, you're a baritone, you're never going to sing higher than an E, like E4, that's your note. Maybe
Yeah.
if you really stretch you can get to like G, maybe, but you'll be straining. And I was like, man, that's such a bummer. All my
Yeah.
favorite singers, like I said, I love Prince, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. Like I want to sing Isn't She Lovely in the original key. And I just have always been kind of a self-motivating person. I don't really like to let other people motivate me. I kind of just like to do it myself.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, screw that. Like I'm gonna figure this out on my own. There's no way, because like I listen to Prince do interviews, and he's like, "Yo, I am Prince." Like I'm like, dude,
Hmm.
that guy's voice is deeper than mine, and he's singing higher than me. There's
Hmm.
no way that's. So I start going on the internet, and this is kind of like YouTube is fully taken off at this point, and I'm looking around, and I see this thing called mixed voice. Mixed
Yeah.
voice. So they're talking about bridging your head voice and your chest voice and getting all these exercises. You're pinching your nose, you're going, all this goofy stuff. And I just kind of like trial by fired it and did a bunch of exercises. And I had this awesome vocal coach when I was in high school. Her name's Marguerite. She's wonderful. And she kind of introduced me to the concept. So I brought it up to her and she was like, here's some exercises you got to do to find it. And then I went to college and I just was like in college, totally like, yeah, trial by fire, trying different exercises. And I remember one day I was just kind of waking up, yawning. And I was like, oh, oh, oh. And I was like, whoa, that's like a B flat. Holy crap. And so it just kind of popped. But so that was at that point I was maybe 18. I was singing a lot higher and more comfortably. But when I started doing weddings, I was using my voice so much and I still wasn't quite dialed in with the mixed voice thing. So I started pushing too much and I actually had a vocal hemorrhage.
Right.
So I had to relearn my mix. And that's how, Brandon, I know you did an interview with, and he's the one who put us in touch. I reached out to him. We met through a friend of a friend we met through a friend of a friend and she was telling me about how great a vocal coach he is. And he really helped me redefine my mix and really like kind of hone in on the idea of like, you can sing effortlessly as high as you can. And so, man, since then, like I've just been going down the rabbit hole. Like I just love doing exercises and I love discovering new ways to use my mixed voice. And it's a long journey to learn how to sing high, but once you get it, I now feel like it's like riding a bike. Like I will never forget this feeling. And so, yeah, now I can sing, up to like a D5, D sharp 5 in like a full voice and have no problem with it,
Yeah, you got a crazy voice. And I think you've brought some really, really cool ideas because I don't know who is spreading this. Maybe it's the industry and that a lot of low voices can't hit high. Like a lot of students I get, and I think it happened to me as well, right? I was like, oh, you're a bass, you're a baritone. Whenever you go to like a choir setting and you're just like, where does this come from? I'm really not sure. But then you start discovering that it's not the absolute truth.
True.
Yeah, jump in.
So I actually, it's funny. I think not only is it not true, I actually think baritones have the ability. I have two coaches. So I work with Brandon. I have this other guy named Tyler who's also awesome. And he was telling me this, and I totally believe it. Baritones have the ability to stretch their vocal cords a lot more than I think tenors do. So I actually think baritones, with the right training, can actually not maybe reach higher notes, but can access a bigger range. I think it's easier if you know what you're doing to learn how to reach higher than it is to reach lower.
Yeah.
So where the rumor came from, I don't know, but that's something I've been told by choir directors and people in school, and like, oh, your bass, just maybe lock the door and turn the lights down. That's your note. Well, God, dude, I want to sing like Prince. I want to sing like Stevie. And I think honestly, it comes from humans speaking, especially English, the language of English. It's such a guttural language. It's very wordy. There's a lot of vocabulary. When we speak, we're in chest voice, all the time. And we're using it so much, and there's a lot of tense jaws and a lot of tense tongues when we're speaking English specifically, that it becomes more difficult for your body to release tension, to feel the right sensation to sing high.
Yeah.
And so you get so used to that people who speak deeper and have thicker vocal cords like we do, it becomes harder to let go of that. So I think people just assume like, you'll never be able to do that. And it's really just because we're learning bad habits by speaking.
Yeah.
So what I do as a teacher, the first thing I do when I hear someone come in and say, I want to sing higher, strip the chest voice, just falsetto. We're going to learn that falsetto. We're going to dial that in. Like, dude, we're going 40 to 30% volume, all falsetto. Go, 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 all falsetto. And then we'll start to click in the mix stuff after you've got all this resonance developed,
Yeah. I like that. That's a very nice approach.
Yeah, man. I just think everyone's like talking in chest all the time. Like, your chest voice is developed. We don't need to work on it. It's fine, So
Yeah.
That's what I think about.
I like that. I think I wanted to add on because I think apart from that kind of guttural, which is very, very, very true, I think there's also a part of us which is we naturally kind of sabotage our own success. which is,
Yes.
for example, when you look at someone who's wealthy, you're like, oh gosh, like he must have like struck it lucky or something. But little do you know that he's just put in time, put in all this effort. He's been doing it for years, right? And I think it's the same with these voices who are like really high. Like I'm sure there's some voices who can naturally do that, but a lot of the
Yeah.
voices they've trained so hard for it. They spent years and years developing their craft. I think for a lot of people who come in like I'm bass, I'm a baritone, I think you're leaving yourself and letting yourself get off easy. Um,
Yeah. I totally agree.
mm,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
I think people music is one of those things where like, and we were talking about burnouts earlier, like this is part of the reason why musicians burn out. Like if you want to be a successful musician, if you want to be a great singer, a great guitar player, whatever, you better put some stuff aside and bust your chops and practice. You gotta
Uh-huh.
work hard. Like,
Uh-huh.
and I think there is a sense of people being like, a lot of people have said like, wow, I really noticed your voice has gotten so much better and you can sing so much higher. Like, how'd you do it? Like, I'm like, I practice like 4 hours a day. Like, it's not like, I'm not just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. Like, and I do think what you're saying is right. A lot of people realize that and they're like, do I really want to put in that much work? I'm just going to say I'm a baritone.
Yeah.
And that's
Mm.
no fault of anybody. Like, each person's journey is very different, but with a little bit of that hard work, like anybody can learn how to do it. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's sort of this sense of like people don't really know where to look and what to do. It's almost like there's a term for this and I've forgotten what it's called, but it's when there's so much information that it's actually too much and you don't look anywhere because it's like all
Mm.
over the place.
Mm.
When I was learning mix, I was like, well, I could use this guy's YouTube or this guy's YouTube or this guy has, Vine back then. This guy does singing vines and this guy does that. And like, where do you start?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the first step is the most important, but anybody listening to this, like if you're wanting to learn how to sing high, like you can do it, anybody can.
Yeah, that's really really cool. I think they do call it information overload. So just when you got so much stuff coming at you, there's like the brain can only absorb so much. You just got to do something.
Yeah,
So
it's like how much.
yeah, so Harry, I know you got a recording session after this. To kind of wrap off for today, if you were to leave the audience with maybe one kind of little singing tip, just because we're singing simply, what
Sure.
would that one tip be?
Oh, that's a great, great question. One singing tip.
Has to be actionable.
So, first of all, warm up every day. I don't care if your voice feels like it's perfect. Do a little bit of warming up every day.
Mm.
Number two, experiment with your voice in the shower.
Ah, nice.
Experiment with your voice in the shower, not in the car. I know everybody's like, I want to belt in the car. Car is not a good acoustic environment, but in the shower, especially in like a big reverby bathroom, you get steam opening up your sinuses. It's lubricating your vocal cords. It's going to be reverby, so you're not going to push too loud.
Mm.
And some people have alternating theories about that, but I think it's easier to sing with a lot of reverb. Just experiment in there. Like there's so much steam. Like I said, it's lubricating your vocal cords. Like they're primed to do their best work in there, So just experiment. And that, I guess the overall tip is just don't be afraid to screw up. Experiment with stuff. You're going to screw up and make weird noises and your voice is going to crack and that's okay. Mine does sometimes too. It's part of the journey,
Uh-huh. Well, there you have it. Thank you very, very much for joining us on
Hey,
Singing
thank
Simply,
you
Harry.
for having me. This is awesome.
I'm definitely going to bring you on. Like, there's so many nuggets that you shared today, and I'm sure that's probably like just the tip of the iceberg here. But I would love to have you on board
I hope
again.
so.